What's up, guys? It's Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be breaking down how quarterbacks can add 10 yards to their deep ball and get a stronger arm. So I hope this video helps you guys out. I hope it can teach you a few new things. But also, fellas, if you're a QB and you guys want to improve your football IQ, you want to learn how to read defenses, how to read coverages, check out that very first link in the description below where you can get access to over 400 plus videos we have on how quarterbacks can read defenses. We have all the videos broken down into playlists, labeled Cover 4, Cover 2. This is our Cover 4 playlist right here, where you guys get probably over 100 different videos on Cover 4. So we break it down just like we break down film on this channel. It's almost like Netflix for quarterbacks. So check out that very first link below, fellas, if you're interested, if you want to get access to this type of content to help your football IQ. Let's get started. So this first clip here, we're going to be breaking down a couple different things in this video. We're going to talk about a bad example of this quarterback throwing and why he loses velocity on this ball and how he can't be consistent throwing like this. And then we're going to show a clip of Bryce Young and explain the differences between the two motions. So when you guys throw, a lot of people will have this misconception about arm strength. They think that it comes from pushing off of your back foot. And I've even heard people say that your front elbow is going to be a source of power. That is completely wrong. Power in your throwing motion comes from two things. It comes from being able to produce weight transfer from your lower half and being able to have hip and shoulder dissociation. So what does that mean? Hip and shoulder dissociation is a fancy word for your shoulders go back as your hips go through. That's how you generate torque. So it's no different than like a baseball swing, right? Like let's say you're in the batter's box, you're holding this bat. When the pitcher pitches you the ball, do you take a step with your front foot and at the same time you open up with the bat? No, you take a step with the front foot and you keep your weight loaded backwards. You keep your weight loaded back, your hands back, so the hip rotation or the pivot of that back toe is what brings the bat through. So when this quarterback goes here, he doesn't have that dissociation. When that front stride goes down, watch what his front side is doing. You see how his front side opens up as he takes the football back. He has no weight loaded back. All of his weight is going forward. So this is going to lose that velocity you can get from hip rotation and weight transfer from your back side. So when all of your weight is going forward, fellas, and you lack hip rotation, your shoulders end up going through before your hips. And what I mean by that is you get to this position. You see how his shoulders are beating his hips through. His leg is extended. That is a position we do not want to get to. Because one, a lot of people think that you'll get arm strength from pulling this elbow down, but it's not a consistent form of arm strength. Yeah, you can maybe pull that elbow down as hard as you want. That ball might shoot off your hand, but look at how high and how outside of his frame that release point is. His body is here off to the left, which makes his arm very inconsistent. And that is solely because he does not have that dissociation. If when that foot got down, his shoulders were loaded back, like his shoulders were loaded back, they weren't ripping open when that front foot struck the ground, none of his weight would be going forward. That hip rotation, that weight transfer would be bringing the ball through, which is how he could create that whip and that power on the throw. But when you open up with your shoulders the exact same time that your front foot gets down, that's when we lose torque. We don't have that dissociation, and those shoulders will beat my hips. So let's play this full speed one more time, and then we'll talk about Bryce Young and pretty much a perfect example of what you want to do. So Bryce Young is going to be hitting a similar type throw where it requires a lot of velocity over the middle. Now I want you to pay attention to his throwing sequence. So remember, we talked about you want your weight loaded back, right? And when that front foot gets down, where do you want your shoulders to be? You want your shoulders to be back and you want your weight to be back. That is exactly where Bryce Young gets to. That's that hip and shoulder dissociation. Because now when that front foot gets down and those shoulders are back, his weight is back, that hip drive, that weight transfer can bring the upper half through. Remember in the last example, we talked about how the shoulders were beating that guy's hips. In this example, Bryce Young's hips are going to be beating his shoulder. And that is the source of arm strength, and that is the source of power. So you have to make sure, fellas, that front shoulder closes off. That front shoulder gets your weight to go back as the front stride gets down. Because now what he can do is he can rotate. He can rotate at that front hip. You see how his front hip is starting to come open. His back hip is rotating through before the football does. That's the position we want to get to. In the last example, that football was all the way up here because the leg extended and the shoulders beat the hips. That is all about that dissociation and that torque that you can produce. So make sure, fellas, anytime that you're getting ready to throw, that front foot gets down as those shoulders go back. Now, one of the main keys that a lot of quarterbacks will screw up on is that they'll do this. Their front foot will get down, their shoulders will go back at the same time, but they are not in a good pre-throw position to generate power and velocity. So what they'll do is they'll be in this position where they hitch up to the throw, but this back foot is super wide. The whole wide base thing was very popular at one point because it will make your front foot get down quicker. You have a wide base, you can push as hard as you want, and that front foot will get down. But you lack hip rotation with a super wide base. So what a lot of quarterbacks will do is they'll naturally have that foot wide. They'll have a lot of weight on their front side. So you physically, maybe your shoulders go back, maybe it times up with your stride, but you do not have any power from that backside because your base is too wide. You need to focus on being able to do the things you need to do with that shoulders back. My weight stays back as the foot goes down. But to get those hips to rotate through, you have to make sure when we hitch up or when we're in a pre-throw position, that foot is underneath that back shoulder. That is the key spot that we want to get to because that spot right there will allow your hips to rotate. You guys could try right now. Stand up and have your feet super wide and try to rotate at your hips. You physically can't do it. But you close your back foot down and you try to rotate at your hips, it's a lot easier. So let's play this thing again full speed. This is a great job or great example here from Bryce Young for us to see the correct hip and shoulder dissociation and the right weight transfer. So now, the issue is, we talked a little bit about that back foot. Now, the issue is when a lot of quarterbacks start getting that back foot there, they have something called an overstride. So I'm sure all of you have heard of an overstride, but the overstride is one of the worst problems that a quarterback can have. So same idea as the last one. We're going to be looking at a bad example of this and then a good example of this. So let's play at full speed. So this quarterback's throwing like this deep out route. He takes this hitch, but obviously, as you can see, he's got that big leg kick, almost like a pitcher. He's dipping his head and shoulders out of this ball. The ball shoots a little high. So why does he do this? And it's solely based on the upper half. As a quarterback, we talked about it, right? When I go to throw, you want that back foot underneath your frame so you could do what? So you could rotate at your hips. You want to be able to get those hips to rotate through, weight to transfer through as the weight stays back. Upper half stays back, weight transfer goes through, bringing the upper half through. That's how we generate torque, and that's how we get velocity. So you see now he's in this position, and now this is where quarterbacks go wrong. They will push off of this back foot. So you see how he pushes off of this foot, and that leg extends. That is no different than being in a super wide base. He pushes, stride goes long, and now what ends up happening to the shoulder plane? Shoulders end up beating his hips. And look at the release point. Very, very similar from the very first guy that we looked at. Head and shoulders are dipping out. Release is pushed high and outside of his frame. That is not where we want to be. This is not going to be consistent. This puts a ton of pressure on your shoulder, a ton of pressure on your elbow, and it just will make you flat out inconsistent, fellas. We need to focus on not only getting my weight to my back leg, being able to stay back, but you got to get your hips involved. And your hips get involved from having a quicker stride. So something I tell my quarterbacks is don't think of it like a push. Don't think of it your back foot hits and you're pushing off the back foot. Think of it like you're taking that weight that you have because your back foot's under your frame, that weight that you have on your back quad, and you're shifting it. Because imagine if his stride got down right now, that back foot wouldn't need to swing up. The only reason that back foot swings is because that front foot is outside the frame, it extends, and he's almost throwing like a pitcher. It's solely based on that overstride, and that will kill your arm strength, fellas. Let's watch the thing again, full speed one more time in case you guys haven't picked it up yet. Arm strength comes from your legs, you transferring weight, and getting that hip to rotate through. Not a bad ball, but we need to have more velocity on that type of throw. Okay. So now we're looking at the story from Kyler Murray. This is a great example of a guy shifting his weight and getting his hips to rotate through for velocity. So let's play at full speed. So look at where his back foot is. Look at how he's shifting his weight, and look at how his hips are opening up. Now, I also show this, and again, this ball was a really good throw. This was like a great back shoulder, has a lot of velocity on it, and that can really help your arm strength. So let's talk about this. When he goes to throw, where's his back foot? Back foot is pretty much underneath the back shoulder, maybe a little bit wide, right? Maybe a little bit wide. But I want you to see when he lets go of the ball, you see how his leg comes out of the grass? That's completely fine, fellas. You don't have to drag. You don't have to just pivot your foot. I know a lot of people teach that. Dude, if you pick your foot up a little bit, that's fine. Just make sure that we're able to transfer weight and get my hips to rotate through. So this is a great example of that. So you see when he's in this pre-throw position, pretty good spot. He starts to go back with his shoulders. He's keeping his weight back as the stride is getting down. But now you see it's not so much of a push off the foot. It is a shift of weight with the quad. His quad is shifting weight forward, and that is what will create the quick front stride. When you guys push off the foot, the stride goes long. When you guys shift the weight forward, but you keep your weight back with the upper half, that is where the stride will be quick. And when that stride is quick, watch what happens to this front hip. The front hip can actually start to open. The back hip can start to come through before the football does. And it is all based on the legs, fellas. Your throwing strength, your arm strength, your throw velocity all comes from how much you can transfer weight, how you can get the front stride down, can you separate your hips and shoulders to generate torque, and how that ball rips off of your hand. That is it. That's all we have to worry about. So if you can get that down, fellas, if you could get that dissociation down, if you could get that back foot location down, and you don't overstride, you are going to see a big, big change in your throwing mechanics and your throwing velocity/distance. Great job here by Kyler Murray showcasing shifting the weight and being able to get his hips to open through because he was in such a good base and because he separated his hips from his shoulders. All right, fellas, I really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. If you guys, again, we really appreciate the feedback. But again, fellas, if you guys would like a full 400+ video guide on how to read defenses and how you guys can get better reading coverages. We give you, like I said, 400 3-minute long videos with everything you need to know on how to read defenses. Check out that very first link in the description below. I'll see you guys next time.